Boop. Happy Monday after Easter. We went through Easter weekend together this weekend. Like I said, Friday. Usually take the weekend off from doing these, and I would see you Monday, and I told you it would be a different world. And I didn't understand when I said that how different it would be. But we came through Easter, and it was an incredible Easter for us, for people in general, especially here where we live in Chattanooga. Besides just the fact that the church, everyone got to witness the church being the church in a new way, how to sing the song in a strange land of COVID-19. And so a lot of people, I think, yesterday were very much out of sorts because it was just an odd way to spend a day that's usually spent in large groups of people, a weekend that's usually spent doing all these things, big Easter egg hunts in the parks and things like that, which is kind of odd when you think about it for Holy Saturday. But then we followed up an odd day with a very strange night for most of the people in the Southeast. And so we had horrible storms. So it was a bad night, and a lot of people today woke up to a worse day. And I think the general feeling that I've heard from a lot of people is, it's been hard enough. It's been hard enough. It's been odd enough. It's been strange enough. And now this. And yeah, it's true. It's been hard enough. And I can't promise you it's not going to be any harder. But it's the question now. This is a legit question. It makes me think of today, in addition to the text from Exodus that we have today, another text that comes out of Exodus 5:6, and it happens right after Moses' first appearance before Pharaoh. If you remember the story of Exodus, you've got this is after the people of Israel have been living in the land of Egypt. If you remember, because you've read Genesis before, right? The whole thing. And you remember that Genesis ends with the people of Israel, the children of Israel, finding their way to Egypt, where Joseph, who was one of the sons, has already ended up and has prepared a place for them to go to survive drought and famine. And it says, so they sojourn in the land for about 400 years. Exodus picks up, and we're told that there's a Pharaoh that's come to power, doesn't remember Joseph, doesn't remember all of that story, and just sees the children of Israel as slaves to do his bidding, to build his temples, build his cities, things like that. And so they groan under this slavery, and they wait for the Lord to hear their cry and send somebody to deliver them. And that person, long story short, is this guy called Moses. And he is sent by God back to Egypt and told to go to present himself before Pharaoh and say, let my people go so they can come out in the wilderness and worship me. And he does that, and it goes horribly wrong. It's a horrible first appearance. It backfires for him, backfires specifically for the people of Israel, the Hebrews living in captivity. It made life harder for them. He had come to them and told them, hey, this is great, God's going to save you, and they're all excited, they believe, and the next thing they know, Pharaoh's really angry. He says, guess what, you still have to make bricks, you still have to keep your quota, you got to make more bricks for me, and you don't get to, I'm not going to provide you with straw, which, if you've ever made mud bricks, because I know that's a pastime for everybody, when was the last time, I know you spent Saturday making mud bricks, but to make mud bricks, you have to have something to bind them together, and that is straw, and so they had to maintain the quota of bricks that they made and go gather all the straw. So by the time they got done, they were exhausted. So Moses had just succeeded in making life harder for the Hebrews. Moses and Aaron, Moses goes to God. God reassures Moses and tells him to go and reassure the Hebrew people. So Moses and Aaron give them God's reassurance. And it's really interesting because at the end of that, this guy named Alter, who has done a really great translation of the Hebrew Bible, you should look it up if you have a chance. He translates Exodus 6:9 this way. It says, but they did not heed Moses out of shortness of breath. And the idea is, and it's shortness of breath and their hard bondage. And the idea being is that they're so overworked, they're so worn out, they're so, it was hard enough, but now this kind of day, that they're just so out of breath that they can't even believe. They can't listen to Moses. They don't want to listen to him. They're just too exhausted to believe. And I think that's where a lot of people find themselves today. It's hard to give reassurance at times like this, and I think this is the hardest thing that pastors have to deal with. For you who are in the church, I think you go to the pastor and expect reassuring words. And I think for those of you who are outside of the church, you're not really sure kind of what the role of the pastor is, but that's a big chunk of it, is to reassure the people, just like Moses and Aaron were doing for the Hebrew children. And it's hard to give reassurance at times like this, especially when you know that people can't even catch their breath, let alone listen to you and the words that you have to say. But the thing is, the only thing that we have to tell you is that, I guess, maybe Moses might have said to the Hebrew children, is that, there's a second wind coming. And that's the interesting thing, is that the reason why Alter translates Exodus 6:9 the way he does is because the word there is ruah. And it can be translated a lot of ways, but he has good reasons that he translates it as breath. That they did not heed Moses out of shortness of breath. So we all find ourselves in a day, times like this when, it's been hard enough, and now this happens, and we're just out of breath. We're out of breath there, and we don't have any hope of a second wind, but there is a second wind coming. And I'm not talking about the Billy Joel song. So this word ruah of God, and that brings us to the text that we actually have today, which is the story of Israel with their backs against the wall once again. Not a mud brick wall, but the wall of water that they have camped near for the night. And Pharaoh has changed his mind yet again, and has decided to rush down upon the Israelites, upon the Hebrew children, and just destroy them and take whatever he can back to Egypt, into Egypt with him. And so here they are with their backs against the water, water's to the east, and here comes Pharaoh rushing in like a hot desert wind from the west. And this is where we find ourselves in Exodus 14. And it says that the people of Israel, once again, they stop believing. They've got their backs against the wall. Their belief in God fails, and they start complaining to Moses, saying, we could have died in Egypt. You could have just left us there, and we could have died happy there. At least we wouldn't be dying out here in the wilderness. And God tells Moses what to do. Moses addresses the people and says, stand back, shut your mouths and watch, and as God delivers you. And it says that the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind. The word there, the root, is the same word that we see in 6:9, that's that ruah of God, where the people are out of breath. And now it's literally the breath of God saving them, driving the sea back by a strong east wind, blowing, I guess, interesting, if you read the story, it's like this east wind is blowing against the hot desert west wind of Pharaoh, hot air of Pharaoh. And that imagery continues. If you go into chapter 15, which for some reason was not the main chunk of text that was part of this story today, they left this out, but Moses sings a song of praise, and he uses this word twice. He says, with the breath of your nostrils, Lord, the waters swelled up, right? It's this idea of God just blowing out of his nostrils with the strong wind and just blowing everything out of the way to make a way clear for his people. And then once Pharaoh had committed to following them across that breach in the water, it says, you blew with your wind and the sea covered them. So what's all this mean? It means life is hard. And I can't promise you that it won't be. I'll be honest with you enough. I can't promise you that it will be any different. And if you're tired, if you're out of breath from this hard labor, you know what? You're only human, and it's okay. Just don't forget your second wind is blowing out of the east. you just have to look and watch for the salvation of the Lord. So anyway, have a good Monday, and we will see you tomorrow. I'm going to boop your nose again. Boop. That didn't work.